The first thing I noticed was how still she was. No breath, no twitch, no sound. For a moment, I thought I was already too late. The body lay twisted on the rocks below the ridge, her fur matted with blood, one leg bent at a sickening angle. I stood there like an idiot for a full minute, my boots sliding on the damp grass, heart pounding like I was the one who fell. Then she moved. Just a flicker. One ear twitched. Barely there, but enough to snap me out of my trance. I didn't think. I slid down the hill, stumbling, grabbing at roots and stones to slow myself, cursing the whole way. When I finally dropped to my knees beside her, she let out a noise. Not a growl, not a cry, more like a breath trying to escape through pain. I don't know what hit me harder, the injury or the eyes. Half-lidded, unfocused, but still wild. She wasn't out of it yet. I reached out, slowly, stupidly, like she was a house cat and not a predator with teeth meant to crush bone. My fingers barely touched her side when she twisted, jaws snapping inches from my wrist. I jerked back. 5 years. 5 years I hadn't touched another living thing with care. And the first time I did, it tried to bite me. Couldn't blame her. I took off my jacket and laid it gently over her. She didn't fight it, just breathed shallow and fast. Her side heaved like an old bellows. I could see now the damage, deep gashes along her ribs, probably from the rocks. The leg was definitely broken. Back paw swollen. Eyes half closed. There was blood. A lot of it. Damn it, I muttered. What am I doing? No one knew I was out here. I didn't even bring my phone. I wasn't expecting company. I came to check on the fencing along the ridge after that last windstorm. I never thought I'd find something dying in the mud. I looked up. The cliff wasn't that high, maybe 20 feet. She must have slipped chasing something. Or being chased. Hard to tell. The smart thing would have been to walk away. Let nature sort it. Circle of life. All that. But something in me refused. I checked for movement again. She was conscious, but barely. I needed to lift her. Carefully. I grabbed a broken tree limb and jammed it under her front legs, trying to slide her onto the jacket like a stretcher. Her body flinched again, but weaker this time. She was slipping. Hey, I said softly, don't you give up. God knows why I said that. It took nearly 20 minutes to get her up the slope. My knees were shot, my back screamed, and the jacket was soaked through. By the time I reached my truck, I was panting like a man twice my age. I opened the tailgate. Empty. Just an old shovel and some tools. No cage. No blankets. Nothing. I laid her down as gently as I could, folding the jacket under her head. She didn't move. I slammed the tailgate shut and ran around to the driver's seat. Fumbled the keys. Started the engine. The road was rough. Every bump made her body jolt. I kept checking the mirror, watching for signs of movement. For a second I thought she was gone again. At the crossroads, I stopped. Left, back home. Familiar, quiet, no questions. Right town. Vet. People. Explanations I didn't want to give. I turned left. I couldn't explain it. Not then. I pulled into the barn. Parked crooked. Jumped out and opened the back. Still breathing. Barely. Inside, I set her down on a stack of old feed sacks. Found a bottle of peroxide, a bucket of warm water, a towel. I hesitated. My hands shook. 5 years ago, I froze like this beside a different body. Smaller. Colder. I took a breath. I cleaned the wounds. She hissed once, too weak to fight. I splinted the leg with wood and duct tape. I didn't know what I was doing. I just did what I remembered. When it was over, I sat on the floor beside her. The barn smelled of hay and iron and blood. Outside, a breeze picked up. She opened one eye and looked at me. Not wild. Not tame. Something else. The next morning, the barn was colder than usual. I had left the side door cracked open, just enough for light and air. I don't know what I expected to find when I walked in. A miracle maybe. But she was still there, curled tight, barely moving. I checked for breathing. Still alive. Her side rose in uneven bursts, like each inhale took more effort than the last. Her leg looked worse in daylight. The swelling had crept up past the joint, and the duct tape was already peeling. I poured some water into a shallow dish and slid it close. She didn't move. I thought about trying to feed her, but she looked too far gone. That's when the thought hit me, this might not work. It wasn't just the wounds. It was everything. The stress, the pain, the fact she was a wild animal who had no idea why she was being kept in a human barn. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. The hum of flies, the creak of old wood, my own breath. Then the smell hit me, Infection. I had to get her somewhere better. But where? There was only one vet in town. Sheila Norris. She and I hadn't spoken in years. Not since the funeral. Not since she told me I should try therapy, and I told her to go to hell. I walked out to the truck, looked in the back. Empty, but I still had the old wooden apple crate from last fall. I hauled it out, grabbed some hay, and patted the bottom. Then went back for the lynx. She didn't protest when I picked her up. Didn't even twitch. That scared me more than if she'd tried to fight. I set her inside the crate, careful to support the broken leg. Closed the lid gently and tied it with bungee cords. On the road, I couldn't stop looking back. Every red light felt like a waste of time. Halfway to town, blue lights flared in the rear view. I pulled over. Boots crunched on gravel. A flashlight tapped the window. License and registration? The officer was young, maybe 20. New face. Probably didn't know me. That was good. What's in the back? He asked, eyeing the crate. Roadkill, I said. Coyote. Figured I'd bury it. He leaned toward the tailgate. I tightened my grip on the wheel. Doesn't look fresh. It's not. He stared at me for a second too long, then handed back my license. Drive safe. I nodded and pulled away. By the time I reached the edge of town, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to the vet. Not yet. Too many questions. Too many eyes. Instead, I swung back onto the county road and headed home. The barn was quiet when I returned. I set the crate down carefully and opened the lid. She was still breathing. Barely. Her tongue had dried at the edge of her mouth. I grabbed a dropper from the toolbox and filled it with water, leaned in and touched it to her lips. No reaction. Again, a tiny lick. Hope. That night, I sat in the kitchen staring at my phone. I had the number for animal control, for the wildlife rehab center 2 counties over. For Sheila, I didn't call any of them. Instead, I opened a drawer and pulled out the photo. Emily, 10 years old, holding a stray kitten she found behind the shed. Her smile bigger than the cat itself. She kept that cat alive for 2 weeks. Every night, she'd sit by the heater, feeding it milk from a syringe. I told her not to get attached. When it died, she cried until she threw up. I remembered that sound. It came back to me in waves. I stared at the picture for a long time. Later, I went back to the barn. The lynx was still. Too still. I pressed a hand to her side. Faint warmth. Just enough. I whispered, "Hang on." I stayed with her most of the night. Every hour, I gave her a few drops of water. I wrapped her tighter in a blanket. I moved the heater closer. At some point, I fell asleep on the floor. When I woke up, the sun was bleeding through the cracks in the wood. My neck ached, my back throbbed. But she was still breathing. And so was I. By the 3rd day, I wasn't sure who was more broken, her or me. The barn smelled like iodine, wet hay, and something older, deeper. That faint scent of blood and time. I filled the syringe with a mix of broth and ground meat. It was lukewarm, bland, but soft enough to push through the rubber tube I'd cleaned 3 times already. She didn't resist when I slid the nozzle to her mouth. I tilted her head gently, slow and careful. Her eyes fluttered but didn't open. "Come on, girl," I muttered, easing the plunger down. "You're not done yet." The first few tries, most of it dribbled out. By the 4th, she swallowed. Barely. That was enough. Twice a day, I fed her like that. Cleaned the leg, changed the wrappings, adjusted the makeshift splint. Each time I leaned in, I waited for her to snap, to claw, to remind me what she was. But she never did. Outside, the world moved on. I didn't. For the first time in years, I wasn't running from anything. I had a task, one that didn't ask questions or dig into old wounds. Until the message came. It was a Wednesday. I only knew that because I still got a weather alert on my phone, and it flashed the date as I checked the radar. Thunderstorms by dusk. And under that, a text. "Sarah, heard you picked up a lynx. Call me." I stared at the screen for a long time, then turned it off. It had to be Sheriff Bell, the only person who still dropped by my mailbox now and then. Probably told someone at the feed store. Word spread. Small town math. I tried to shake it off, but by late afternoon I was pacing the barn like a caged dog. Every creak of the floorboards made me flinch. Every buzz of the phone, silence after the text, felt like a countdown. Around 6, she pulled in. Her tires crunched the gravel the same way they used to on weekends when she came to drop off Emily. I didn't go outside, just waited in the barn. The door opened behind me. "So it's true," she said. I turned. Sarah stood in the doorway, her arms crossed tight. Same old jacket, same pinched expression. How did you? You think people wouldn't talk? A lynx, Tom? Are you out of your mind? I said nothing. She walked in slowly, glancing at the blankets, the feed sacks, the water bucket. Then she saw the animal. Jesus. She moved closer, crouched, but kept her distance. She's alive. Barely. Why didn't you call someone? I was going to, but you didn't. I didn't answer. Sarah stood, brushing straw from her knees. You're not equipped for this. She's a wild predator, Tom. You think this is helping? I think she'd be dead otherwise. That shut her up for a second. She looked at me hard. You're doing this because of Emily. Don't. She's gone, Tom. I said don't. We stood there in silence. Nothing moved but the dust and the light. Then something did. The lynx shifted. Not much. Just a stretch of her neck. Her head lifted, slow and shaky, and for the first time, her eyes opened fully. Golden. Alive. She looked at Sarah first. Then me. She didn't growl. Didn't flinch. She just looked. And something in that gaze, something cracked open. Sarah stepped back. She's watching you. Like she knows you. Maybe she does. Sarah didn't answer. She turned toward the door. You can't keep her, you know. I know. She paused. If you need help. I mean, if you really want to do this right. I still have Sheila's number. She might be willing to consult. Quietly. I didn't reply. Sarah left. That night, the rain came in sheets. I moved her crate closer to the wall and stuffed towels around the edges. At some point, I sat beside her again. She was still watching me. I whispered, you and me both, huh? Stuck in a world we didn't ask for. She blinked. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. By the end of the second week, she was standing. Wobbly, slow, favoring the bad leg. But she stood. That alone felt like a miracle. I watched her from the doorway, trying not to make noise. The barn had become her world, and I didn't want to disrupt the rhythm. She stretched, carefully, like a cat learning her own bones again. Every time she moved, it felt like something in me moved too. But peace doesn't last long out here. It started with a knock. A hard, insistent banging on the front door, not the kind neighbors use. I opened it to find Mike Greeley standing on my porch, flanked by his son Tyler. Both wore the same look, suspicion wrapped in anger. You keeping something back there, Tom? Mike asked. I said nothing. One of our goats is gone. Not a trace left. Not even fur. Just tracks, big ones. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? No. You sure? Tyler added, stepping forward. We heard stories. People say you're keeping a lynx. That true? I looked him in the eye. You believe everything people say? I believe what I saw, Mike snapped. Tracks came straight from your property. And if that thing gets loose again, she didn't get out. Then who killed my goat, Tom? You. There was a long pause. I didn't move. Neither did they. Finally, Mike spat on the porch and turned. You better handle it before someone else does. They left. Gravel flew under their tires. I didn't go back inside. Just stood there in the doorway for a while, watching the dust settle. That evening, I double-checked every door in the barn. The lynx was still inside, resting in her corner, licking her paw. She didn't look like a killer, but I couldn't shake the thought. Could she have gotten out? I hadn't locked the side panel 2 nights ago. I was tired, distracted. She looked at me, calm, silent. I whispered, did you do it? No answer, of course. Just those eyes. That night, I didn't sleep. Next morning, I called Sarah. I need Sheila's number, I said. She hesitated, then texted it to me. I dialed. The line rang twice. Tom. I didn't expect her to answer with my name. Didn't even know she had my number saved. I need a favor, I said. I know what it's about. Sarah told me. Will you come out? Only if you're ready to do the right thing. I wasn't sure what that meant. She showed up that afternoon, driving the same Subaru she had for years. She brought a bag of supplies, a tablet, and a face that had seen too much kindness go unreturned. Let me see her, she said. In the barn, she moved like a ghost, efficient, quiet, familiar. She knelt beside the lynx without hesitation, gloves on, light in hand. You've done better than I expected, she muttered. That bad, huh? Could have been worse. She examined the leg, checked her spine, then asked me to lift the lynx onto the blanket so she could assess the hips. I did. She flinched a little, but stayed still. Sheila pressed gently along the back. Pelvic fracture, she said. Partially healed, but she'll always move stiff. You got lucky. So did she. Can she live in the wild again? Maybe. Depends how much pain she can tolerate. And how much you're willing to let go. I said nothing. She packed up her things and stood. You're not the same man I remember. Good or bad? Different. She paused. Take her in. Proper exam. Imaging. I'll schedule it quiet. No questions. 1 hour in and out. And then what? That's your choice. I looked at the lynx. Her ear twitched. She was listening. Tomorrow, I said. The next day, I loaded her into the crate again. This time with towels, water, a sedative Sheila had given me. The drive to the clinic was long, but not unbearable. The whole way, I kept checking the mirror. Sheila met me at the back. No waiting room. No staff. She ran scans, blood work, x-rays. Said little. An hour later, she gave me a folder. She's healing. No signs of infection. Bones are fusing clean. She'll always have a limp. But she'll live. And the goat wasn't her. She'd need full mobility to take one down. She barely has balance. Probably coyotes. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just think hard before you decide. I nodded. Back home, I let her rest in the crate, door open. She didn't move at first. Then, slowly, she stepped out. 3 steps. 4. She turned and looked at me. And waited. I sat down beside her. The barn was quiet again. But this time, the silence didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like a question. The mornings came earlier now. Softer. Warmer. There was that sharp scent of damp grass and thawed dirt in the air. The kind that told you spring was giving way to full-blown summer. She moved freely by then. No more dragging. No more trembling steps. Still limping. Yes, but she carried herself with something close to pride. Confidence had returned to her body like breath to lungs. Sometimes I'd find her perched on the feed bin, tail flicking like a metronome, watching the dust float in the light. Other times, she'd curl in the shadows and track every bird that dared land too close to the barn. But she never tried to run. Not once. I left the door crack more often. At first, just an inch. Then more. I told myself it was for the air, for the smell of the field. But truth was, I was testing her. Or maybe testing myself. Would she go if I let her? And if she did, what would that mean? One night, I woke up in the recliner with the barn lights still on. I'd been reading an old vet manual from the library, trying to figure out what to feed her next. Something better than reheated meat paste. I walked out and found her at the edge of the open door, nose up, ears forward, body frozen like sculpture. You thinking about it? I whispered. She didn't turn, just kept sniffing the dark. You can go if you need to. Still nothing. Then she stepped back. Saturday. Watch me. I laughed. A short, surprised sound that startled even me. Guess not yet. The days blurred. I fed her less. She hunted mice once or twice. I found the remains, and one morning, a rabbit, neatly opened and untouched. A gift? A warning? I wasn't sure. But something shifted. I talked to her more now. Rambling stuff. Things I hadn't said out loud in years. About Emily. About the divorce. About how the silence had rotted into something worse than loneliness. She never replied, of course. But sometimes she'd blink, slow and deliberate, like she understood more than I expected. Then one morning, I opened the barn and she was gone. The blanket was still there. The bowl half full. But the crate sat empty. No blood. No struggle. Just absence. I stood there a long time, hand on the doorframe. I checked the field. The trees. Walked the fence line twice. No prints. No tail flicking in the tall grass. Just wind. I didn't panic. Not really. I think I always knew this was coming. But it still hit harder than I was ready for. The barn felt hollow after that. I stopped sleeping in the chair. Ate dinner in silence again. I left the door open each night, just in case. But every morning, it was the same. Nothing. Sarah called once. Left a voicemail. Heard she's gone. You okay? I didn't answer. Didn't need to. 3 days passed. On the 4th, I went to replace the broken feeder near the edge of the woods. The squirrels had chewed through the hinge again. Typical. I was halfway through tightening the last bolt when I heard it. Not a growl. Not a cry. Just a low hiss. Sharp. Familiar. I turned slowly. There she was. 20 feet away. Standing still. Watching me. She looked thinner. Wetter. Like she'd rolled through creek beds and brush. But she stood proud. Balanced. Alive. She didn't come closer. Didn't blink. I stood there, wrench in hand, heart racing in a way I hadn't felt since the day I found her. You came back? I said. She tilted her head. I took one step forward. She backed away. All right. No closer. Another moment passed. Then she did something strange. She sat. Right there. Like before. Tail wrapped around her front paws. Eyes locked on me. We stayed like that for maybe a minute. And then she stood, turned, and walked into the trees. No rush. No fear. Just gone. I didn't follow. Back at the barn, I cleaned out the crate. Folded the towels. Took down the tarp from the window. The space looked bigger now. Not emptier, just honest. Later that evening, I sat on the porch. No drink. No book. Just the sky. Something inside me had shifted too. She was gone. But it wasn't loss. It was a release. And for the first time in years, I felt something I didn't expect to feel again. Peace.